Hello everybody, and thanks for coming right on time. Thank you. We are here to welcome you to this talk that we're running tonight, and it's on house demolitions in Palestine. And we, as you probably know, are Hexham Labour Party activists who are working in partnership with Newcastle Palestine Solidarity Campaign and Labour Friends of Palestine. The talk will be introduced by Ann Schofield, and you'll see Ann just somewhere on your screen, and it'll be facilitated and introduced by Ann, who is a Newcastle councillor and a member of Labour Friends of Palestine, as well as the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. And she'll be introducing our speakers, and we've got 3 speakers for you tonight. We've got Cody, who's going to go first. We've got Beth, and we've got Awdah. We'll be recording the event. In fact, I'm recording it right now because I usually forget to do that. It'll be made available on our website, which the link for which is in the chat box on your screen, or just go to your view menu and have a look at the chat box. And there are many useful links there too, to help you support the Palestinian cause. There's Facebook pages for Newcastle Labour Friends of Palestine, and our own Facebook page, as well as the website for Hexham, as I say. And also a couple of websites for the organisations that the speakers belong to, which is the Good Shepard Collective and the International Solidarity Movement. The session is going to run for about 90 minutes overall, so there'll be about 20 minutes per speaker, and they're going to show some multimedia, etc. And there will be time, hopefully, for questions at the end. But if there isn't time for questions tonight, you can always post your questions on the Facebook pages. And when we do have questions, if we have time for them, Katie, who you'll see on your screen somewhere, will be doing her best to make sure that the questions are taken in order. So if you could just say who you would like to answer your question and be very succinct about your question itself. So now over to Ann, who will introduce the speakers.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Zoom meeting. We're all getting better at these Zooms, but they still are a bit nerve-wracking, particularly when you want to put on films and things, so bear with us if you can. As usual, what I'd like to say is to welcome everybody who's come here tonight, but also to send a message of solidarity and friendship from us to everyone in Palestine, and tonight particularly Palestinians whose homes have been demolished or their villages have been demolished as well. And we think this is one of a series of Zooms on the Palestinian question. And we're very, very pleased to have Palestinian speakers, as well as people who are actually working to support them. And I think it's important tonight because we know that the demolitions are happening at a very, very bleak time for Palestinians, just everywhere, but particularly for those losing their homes, which many of them have had for generations. I think it's important to say that since 1948, Israel has demolished over 100,000 Palestinian homes in the occupied territories and thousands more within Israel. And we have to actually put this discussion tonight within a wider context. And that's just briefly to say, what we've got to look at is the way that Israel has captured the narrative on demolitions, and they put it within a security and terrorism narrative that bears no relationship to the experience of the Palestinians who are victims. And also, of course, we have Trump's misnamed peace deal of the century. And in this, he's given the Israeli state permission to annex large areas of Palestinian land, most recently in the West Bank and the Jordan Valley. That wasn't his right to do, but he's done it anyway, and he's very powerful within it. And I think we also have to put this question of demolitions within the context of the policies of illegal settlements across the occupied Palestinian territories that violate international law. They're all actually increasing the demolitions and the plight of the Palestinians. And finally, in the UK, we have to actually look at the UK arms trade with Israel, which is worth £16 billion to us within the UK. So why is it happening? How is it happening? We have a lot to learn, and we're very lucky tonight to have three fantastic speakers who will take us through their experiences of it, and also what it means for people on the ground, and also some ideas on what a just solution for Palestinians would be, whose lives are being destroyed by demolitions. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Cody O'Rourke. He works for the Good Shepard Collective in their communications and advocacy, and he'll tell us more about that. He has worked in Palestine since 2005 for the Christian Peacemaker Teams, the Israeli Committee Against Home Demolitions, and Defence for Children International. He's also the co-founder of the Good Shepard Collective, which is, as we'll hear, a grassroots organisation based in the South Hebron Hills. And this develops localised advocacy initiatives, which is really important to hear about, with the aim of strengthening Indigenous resistance. He'll be followed by Bethany and Awdah, and I will introduce them afterwards. But Cody, over to you.
Thank you, Anne, for the introduction. Thank you, everyone, for helping organize this, as well as all the people who decided to participate in the Zoom call. I think you know, kind of jumping right into it. You know, the Good Shepard Collective. You know, we're a collective that really kind of leverages, you know, our unique experience, and you'll hear more about that, you know, from Awdah, you know, one of the Palestinians who also co-founded this organization, because, you know, the experiences of the occupation and the way that Israel's program of settler colonialism impacts the indigenous communities, they're affected differently. And so, you know, out in Khair, where Awdah lives, you know, all of the homes but two are under threat of demolition. There's a real lack of water. Nearly all of the homes have been demolished at least once. So that's a very unique experience in a lot of ways, you know, to Awdah and the people of South Hebron. Whereas, you know, if you're a Palestinian, you know, living in Area A, perhaps like in Ramallah or in Bethlehem, you know, your house isn't under threat of demolition. You know, you have electricity, you have, you know, you don't have, you know, Israeli settlers in your backyard every day. And so what we've come to see is that, you know, the different approaches in coming to understand what justice is and what it looks like, we have to like reconstruct that narrative, right? You know, one of the things that we talk about is, you know, we don't want you to give us a blanket, you know, after the homes have been demolished. You know, we need you to change the laws, right? Because what we see is a lot of groups that come in and out of Palestine. And, you know, the support that they want to offer is, you know, providing more educational scholarships, or they want to, you know, build a playground or these sorts of things. And while those are helpful on the humanitarian level, you know, we need the laws to change. You know, so what we tell people, and I think this kind of goes back to what Anne was hinting at, is that, you know, it's not about Israelis and Palestinians, it's about ushering in a set of laws that's equitable for everyone, right? It's about allowing Palestinians to build on their own land, right? And not be discriminated against. So with inside of that, the legal resources that Israeli settlers leverage to continue to colonize Palestinian land. But in addition to that, the material resources they're able to garner from overseas. So for example, the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign, the JNF, is how the Jewish National Fund is able to leverage their vast resources, both financial and political, to displace Palestinians. Okay? So the Solidarity Campaign is doing that, is going, should this organization operate as a charity, right? So the JNF, while it operates as a charity in the UK, it doesn't operate as a traditional charity, okay? Because it sits on the zoning and planning committees inside of the Israeli West Bank and inside of Jerusalem, inside of the Galilee, Haifa, how all of this is going to be colonized, and they actually put in place the tactics that displace the indigenous Palestinians. Because what we try to say is that, you know, we can't have these nebulous campaigns of going, oh, well, BDS, well, what does that mean? How do we implement that? There has to be some additional analysis, right? And we try to open up these conversations around campaigning in general. Okay, so for example, you know, there's a group of Palestinians in the South Hebron Hills whose homes are continually being demolished. Okay, and so, all right, well, we have this BDS campaign and we get some obscure band from Norway not to come to Tel Aviv and play the bongos. And so, okay, great. You know, this band didn't come to Tel Aviv and play the bongos, but how did that impact Palestinians in South Hebron Hills in a material way, right? So, you know, if we can take away some of the financial resources of these organizations like the Jewish National Fund and some of these other alt-right wing organizations, then Palestinians experience life in an altogether different way. So those are some of the main focuses of the Good Shepard Collective. And of course, you know, we do the usual things that most organizations do by having briefings, by having tours, you know, having some protests, organizing protective presence for Palestinian communities who may, you know, be under threat. We do documentation, communication work. You know, but again, our big focus is having these conversations around what campaigns make sense and which ones might not. To pass it on and ask some questions later, or do you want me to talk more about how the settlements are expanding in the South? Which way would you like me to go, Ann?
I think more of what you've just said, Cody, but did you have that map that you could put up, or is that too difficult? I know it is difficult with the internet and with the Wi-Fi and etc., but I think it would give people a really good idea of,
Sure.
of what you've said about the different places. But if it's
Sure.
too difficult, don't worry.
Sure. Yeah. Let me get it going here. All right. So I'm just using a Google map because I think that's kind of the cleanest map to use. So we see Jerusalem here, and al-Khair is in the West Bank, in the very, very south part of the West Bank, next to the Israeli settlement of Carmel. It's right here, basically. And so what you can see is like a lot of Palestinian communities. You know, al-Khair is surrounded by Israeli settlements, by Carmel, by Maon, by the settlements in the north, the settlers in Hebron. And in very real ways, you know, the community of al-Khair is really under an existential threat with the Israeli settlements kind of being built around it as like a horseshoe shape, cutting al off from Jerusalem, from the other commerce areas in Tel Aviv. Of course, there's already a wall, but what we're seeing is that this settlement development not only isolates them, but also puts them more at risk, because when you have these ideological settlers, you know, there's a greater tendency for them to act out in violence. And what you've seen over especially the last 3 years is that there's been a steady increase in settler violence in the South Hebron area as well as in Nablus. And so, as you can see with this map, and I think this is this map, along with other ones, really kind of hits home the idea that what we're dealing with is really a process of settler colonialism. You know, we try to challenge people and have them move away from the discussion of having it be the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, because it's not a conflict, and it has nothing to do with whether it's symmetrical or whether Israel has more power or whatever, right? It's about going, you know, there's non-native people that are coming here and displacing the local population. The very same things that happen in Australia, the United States, and Canada, Algeria, et cetera, because people like to exceptionalize what is going on here, and there's really nothing new, right? It's just the fact that it's going on today. You know, we have Europeans, you know, people who are not from here that have, you know, put together structures that are intentionally placed. And as you can see, like historically, you know, the Palestinian presence being pushed into little tiny ethnic enclaves, you know, mostly in Nablus and around Ramallah and the Hebron area. That's one of the things that I think the Good Shepard Collective does a good job in talking about, is how this really isn't a conflict, but rather a process of colonialism.
That's really fantastic. In terms of the work you're doing, can you just sort of say about on the ground? I mean, you talked about protecting presence, which I know many people don't quite understand. Could you just say a bit about how you work on the ground?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about what the Good Shepard Collective does, because I don't want to get too much into, I think, Beth's work and experience. So the idea of it really is acknowledging that Palestinians in the West Bank, they live under a military regime. So they don't have the same rights and privileges as Israelis or internationals, for example, okay? So when communities are under threat of either settler violence or having their homes demolished, or just a routine military presence, what we've done in the past is organize internationals or our you know, our friends, our Israeli friends, to go into these vulnerable communities to kind of stave off, you know, the violence until maybe there's another solution that's possible. We've done that in al-Khair several times, where the community, you know, was having threats of their homes being demolished, or there was ongoing settler attacks. But I think that some more of that dynamics of protective presence and what it means to you know, to engage in that sort of work, I think I'm going to let Beth talk more about that.
Okay, I just think that's really good, because you've given us a sort of overview, which I think we really needed. There'll obviously be some questions. So I just thought perhaps now, if that's okay, we'll turn to Bethany, which I can see. There you are, Bethany, sort of. And it's again to say how great it is to have you with us, Bethany, and you can explain a bit of what you do. And I know you're going to take us through a whole range of important issues, really. But my understanding is you're a journalist, on Palestinian rights activist, and you work with refugees in France and in Lesbos. So you have a very wide experience, which we all benefit from. And I know you went to Palestine last year with the International Solidarity Movement, and that is a non-violent direct action group founded in the Second Intifada, and your aim was to support Palestinian popular resistance. And I know, I mean, I've witnessed one house demolition and I was devastated, and I know you've witnessed 3. And just to see it happening and to see the total suffering of the people is just awful. And it would be really good to hear more about that. And so really over to you. And I know you have a short film as well. So we're hoping that the Wi-Fi works, but welcome, and we look forward to what you've got to say.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you for inviting me, and to everyone listening on the call today. Yeah, like Anne said, I'm Bethany. I was in Palestine last year for around 3 months with the International Solidarity Movement. And during that time, I saw 3 house demolitions, which were only a few of the many that happened during the time I was there, because as Cody says, they're really relentless. They happen like on a near daily basis. I'm going to focus on the demolitions I witnessed in East Jerusalem last year, where the Israeli government demolished 13 apartment blocks, displacing 27 people, including 11 children. And they did these demolitions by sending hundreds of soldiers to the area to brutally drag out the families from their homes. And the activists, including me, who were there to kind of document what was happening and provide a presence. But I'd just like to run quickly through some of the kind of backgrounds of Israel's demolition policy, in case there's anyone who doesn't know so much about why they happen or where they happen. Cody's touched on it already, but I thought I would just do a little run through. So since 2009, almost 7,000 Palestinian structures have been demolished, displacing 11,000 people. They take place throughout the West Bank, also in the Nakab, with Bedouin communities in Gaza and East Jerusalem. And they don't destroy just homes, they destroy water wells, they uproot olive trees, animal barns, so kind of every like option for people's livelihoods. Most of them take place in Area C. So the West Bank's divided between different areas. Area A is run by the Palestinian Authority, C is by Israeli authorities, and B is kind of a mixture of the two. Because the Israelis have authority in Area C, they kind of control planning. So if a Palestinian wants to build a home, they have to get a permit. And they're basically never given. So between 2016 to 2018, 98% of permits were rejected, which means that people basically have to build without. Another major reason of why Israel, the pretext of why they carry out demolitions, is a security or military purposes. And this is a very broad reason, and it includes punitive demolitions. So if someone's committed or thought to have committed an attack, then their family is subjected to a collective punishment of a house demolition. In East Jerusalem, it's the same kind of principle as in Area C. So people need to get permits, and these are really increasing a lot. So in 2019, there were more house demolitions than in any year since 2000. Sorry, that's supposed to say 2004, not 2014. So they're slowly emptying East Jerusalem's of the Palestinian population, essentially to make way for Israelis to move into those neighborhoods. And this takes me to Wadi al-Hummus. So a lot of people from East Jerusalem, they were kind of moving to this area of Wadi al-Hummus because it has a kind of strange status in that it is on the Israeli kind of like historical Palestine side of the apartheid wall, but it's still in Area A. So the apartheid wall here is just this fence. It's not always the big wall that you see in the pictures. And this is kind of a confusing map, but Wadi al-Hummus neighborhood is kind of where I put the arrow. The red line is the apartheid wall, and this is Area A. And so basically it occupies a strange space where they can kind of have the benefits of being on this side where they can easily access East Jerusalem and jobs without having to move into the West Bank, where, you know, people's freedom of movement is severely restricted. You have to go through checkpoints if you want to go through to East Jerusalem, and all of this. So yeah, so people were moving to this area, and this is why a man called Ishmael and his family moved there, and this was their house, the pink house in the middle. And he used to live in East Jerusalem, but he was staying in his father's house in like a small room with his wife and his 6 children, because he wasn't able to build in East Jerusalem. So he moved to Wadi al-Hummus. He got his permits from the Palestinian Authority. He started to build. And then the Israeli Authority said, actually, no, you can't build here. This is illegal. Your house is a security risk because it's too close to the apartheid wall. And this was kind of a new reason that they hadn't used so much before. So it also is quite a scary precedent. And so they issued demolition orders on 13 buildings, including the ones you see in this picture. So this kind of unfinished block, they said that the top floors were a security threat, so they had to be demolished. The one on the far left, which is on the other side of the wall, and Ishmael's house, most of the blocks were kind of still under construction, but 2 were occupied by 2 large families. So this is Ishmael in his kitchen. It's a lovely pink kitchen. We were asked by the community to stay in the area over the weekend when the deadline for the demolitions was happening, because the community had tried to fight against the demolitions in the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court went on the Israeli government side and said, no, you have to demolish your homes. So we stayed with him over 2 nights, and we could see, you know, he was unbelievably stressed. He was facing everything he'd worked towards for years being pulled down. But kind of despite this, on the first night we were there, he showed us amazing, you know, hospitality, as every one who knows Palestinians knows is the case. So many sweet teas and pizza, and we slept in his children's rooms. His wife and children were staying somewhere else, so they weren't in the house at the time. And so, yeah, when the bulldozers came on the July 22nd last year, it was about 3 in the morning. And I wanted to show you a video of kind of the moments before and during this night, because it shows a lot more than words can how kind of traumatic and horrendous it was for Ishmael and his family. So I hope it works.
You're here to try to stop this?
القدس والبحر وهذا الحمص جايين نهدم المباني المتشقة في القدس
كلهم أخوها مأخوها كركان لا نحن متبللين بول لفناش تهرس لفنا هرسان ما يشتكوك نحن نختصر ليكو أخوها يلا قديمة شنيا خدم يوتر كم سالي أشير كم قديمة يلا كم سالي شوكا بركة كده بكودات كلهم نهدفين أخوها يلا يشوف كم 5 دقائق.
الله أكبر.
Hopefully it will play in a second.
لما تقول ضغط اليوم، يعني انا مش قادر اتحمل الضغط اللي انا فيه، تعبان كتير. والله فكرت كل شيء. والله كل شيء.
طب ليش هذا القزاز؟ ليش اخترت القزاز؟
هذا عشان اللون بالشمس بشوفش جوا البيت. انا شلت كل الحيطان كلكل ولبسته كمان طوب. بالحم تحط يدك هيك ما بتحس بالحم.
والله.
الجيش بده يهدم. القاضي قال له دور على شيء ثاني، جبنا له شغلات ثانيه. تفاجأت بشهر 6 لما طلعوا القرار المحكمة انه هدم. طب ليش هدم؟ لانه قرب على الجدار. لانه انا بيتي قانوني اصلا يعني. بالقانون ممنوع يهدموه. مع الترخيص مع كل شيء. لما يهدم لي اياه يعني انا بالنسبه لي انا يعني موت بدري هذا. اكثر شغله بتزدني ولادي.
ليش؟ شو
بتعرف انا لما ابني لي البيت زي هيك ما قدرتش احمي بيتي. شو معناته؟ انا كثير مش شوي يعني انا ولا اشي. يعني ما قدرت احمي بيتي اصلا يعني.
بس الحكم مش حلق يعني.
حتى ولو
واذا لو يعني بهدوا البيت وين ايش بتفكر تعمل يعني العيله وين؟
والله ما في الحل. يعني اذا انهدم البيت انا ما مش هطلع مش راح يعني وين بدي اروح؟ بدي احط خيمه جنب البيت واقعد محل البيت لانه هذا البيت ثمنه كثير عندي غالي. هذا البيت كل شيء سويت فيه يعني اخترته انا وتعبت فيه انا.
طيب شكرا كثير.
اذا وصلنا للقاضي بكره الصبح تقول لي تعال بدي اوصلك للقاضي. قلت لك شو ما بدك بس وصلنا للقاضي. انا بدي اشرح له عن حالي بعد هو ياخذ قرار. هذا هو اللي مش عارفين كيف بدنا نعيش معهم. ما طلبناش منها شيء اللي عندنا نقدر نعيش معها. ما بدنا شيء منهم. ما بدنا يساعدونا بشيء يعني غير نعيش بيوتنا اولادنا يعني طلب عادي بسيط ما عاد بدنا نحصل عليه. ان شاء الله بكره ما يجوش.
ان شاء الله ما فيش حاجه ونمحي هذا وما يكون ننسى من الموضوع ان شاء الله. اذا هذا عن جد بشطبه.
أنا نفسي أشطب تاريخ حياتي كله اللي صار الشهر هذا والله لأنه هذا الشهر أسود.
والله مش عارف شو أحكي. يلا اسماعيل شكرا. يعطيك العافية. يعطيك العافية. طيب بنكون هون الصبح كمان مرة. طيب شكرا.
אתה יכול לפתוח את הדלת?
הוא לא מכאן, אנחנו בלי מפתח, הוא צלמים.
תעמי במקום אחר, גברת.
كلها كابول. في من الثاني مرسوم لانه عباي كلها كابول. هذا ربا. لا ما يخافي من دينكم. يلا.
So yes, so we were in the house during this break-in. There was a group of about 14 of us ISM activists and about 30 of Ishmael and his friends and family. And we were kind of asked to come to the area. There were also lots of other activists there staying in other houses to do, as Cody was saying, that they sometimes do in Amal Khair, a kind of protective presence. So sometimes if there's a sort of presence of foreigners in a place, it makes the Israeli soldiers or the authorities think twice about carrying out a massive abuse against people. So when the soldiers came, it was about, as I said, 3 in the morning. I'd fallen asleep for about 10 minutes before I heard drilling outside. And I looked out the windows and saw that they were coming through the fence with big demolition equipment already. We kind of all went out to the balcony and we had a view from there of the unfinished building, which was already surrounded at this point. And we kind of saw soldiers going in, shining their flashlights around. We thought they were looking for people, but it turned out that they were actually rigging the whole top floors with dynamite. We kind of watched as busloads and busloads of soldiers came to the area. And we kind of realized that, with all of the people showing up, that this was it, that they were going to demolish everything this night, all of the 13 buildings, because before we didn't know if they were going to demolish some day and some others days. Some of us went down to the house down the road that was also had a demolition order. And then at about 5, we saw dozens of fully armed riot police running towards Ishmael's house. So we activists split into 2 teams. 4 of us went to the smallest room of the house, the bathroom, where it would be difficult to remove us. We kind of chained ourselves together and knelt on the floor. We kind of decided with Ishmael that we would do this action because it's a tactic that has worked before to delay demolitions, like in the situation of Khan al-Akmar, a village. But we knew that this was going to be pretty unlikely, that just to make it more difficult for soldiers to kind of come in, take people out and rip down these houses, we thought it was a risk worth taking. So from that small room, we just heard all the riot police smashing through the door. All we can hear is just their roaring, the sound of sound grenades going off, which make a really massive sound. They just kind of shake the whole house. Tear gas canisters, we kind of like heard them being put through. We had no idea what was happening below us, so we're just in this small room in the dark, basically. And then the door slammed open and we saw this kind of towering figure above us. He shouted, threw in a tear gas canister, closed the door and left. So it's a tiny space. We all start choking and we can't breathe, and the door opens again. They come and they drag us out one by one. I was wearing a keffiyeh at the time. One of the police just grabbed my keffiyeh and dragged me backwards. And that kind of moment of violence really shook me completely, because I knew then that they didn't care if they hurt us or not, which was a really terrifying experience. And I started screaming, and the soldier just got angry because I was screaming, so he got down and just dug his knee into my neck. And all this time I just have my eyes completely closed. I don't think it was a conscious decision that I made, but I think it was sort of one of self-preservation. So all I can hear is really my screams and the screams of my friends. And then they drag me again, but this time by my hair. And I kind of don't remember too much of the next seconds. The next thing I remember is being at the bottom of the stairs, just seeing blood all over the floor. and I couldn't see anyone else from the house, just two of my friends. So I really thought at this moment that they must have killed someone. When we kind of eventually pushed out, I realized that everyone had already been kicked out before us. And it was, I can't even tell you how much of a relief it was to see that everyone was there, our friends and Ishmael and his friends and his sons. And I was actually recording the invasion as it happened on my phone in my bag. And I saw that the whole thing from when they broke in to when we were out was just 7 minutes. And it felt like an eternal nightmare. I was so shocked when I saw that it was just 7 minutes. My friends had had a lot worse time in there than me. My friend was limping. He'd been stamped on in the head and the neck and the chest by soldiers. He put his hands up at one point saying, I walk out, I'm not gonna resist. And then they just threw him across a table. Everyone's clothes were ripped. Another friend was like pepper sprayed right in the face while she was on the floor with her hands cable tied so she couldn't move. Sorry, I haven't been going through. On the other side of the house, we kind of learned what happened over there. Our friends were with Ishmael and all his sons and kind of trying to push the door to stop them coming in. But every time there was a crack, they would just throw in a tear gas canister or a sound grenade. And people pretty quickly said, like, halas, stop, we're going to leave. But that didn't stop the soldiers from just dragging people out, kicking them down the stairs, kicking them in the back, punching them in the back of the head. And this is the kind of video of what was happening on the other side at that time. So you can see they just turned his house into a war zone, basically. And down the road, where our friends had gone into another house, there were all the other kind of activists in there, Israeli activists, and the family had decided to stay, so the children were all there as well. Once they'd, the grandfather of the house, he said to the soldiers that, you know, this house is my life, and if you destroy it, you destroy my life, and you will have to destroy it with me in it. But the officers just dragged him out in front of his crying grandchildren and threw him outside. And when all the activists with the cameras were kicked out, my friends were then hit in the face with the gun, kicked in the stomach and face. We kind of needed some treatment afterwards. So one of my friends had a fractured rib, another one fractured fingers. I had an ultrasound on my neck just to make sure there was no damage, and there wasn't. And the Palestinians who were in Ishmael's house, they were treated for rubber-coated steel bullet wounds because they'd been fired at close range for broken fingers. And we realized afterwards that the people sent to come and drag us out the house were a special unit of Jerusalem riot police called Yassam. And these are the people that are sent to break up prison riots. So they're actually trained to do everything that they did to us: fire tear gas inside, twist people's fingers and break them, stamp on people's necks. And these were the people who were sent to drag out families from their homes, and kind of more personally looked at us who were totally defenseless and just beat us up. Later that day, they demolished everything, I think within about 24 hours. So this was Ishmael's house. I believe, or it could be the one on the other side. And they detonated the first floors, the top floors of the unfinished building. There was actually a video released of Israeli soldiers pressing the red button and laughing and clapping as it was destroyed and covered the whole neighborhood in pulverized concrete, which is, you can kind of see there. So yeah, so you know, at the end of all of this, 13 buildings were destroyed, 23 people homeless, including 11 children, and the future homes of many people also destroyed. And the operation to do this was a massive military one with 900 soldiers, with thousands of explosives, hundreds of guns, sound grenades, tear gas, and pepper spray. These demolitions were not carried out as the Israeli government, courts, and military claimed to protect Israeli citizens from a threat to their security, because how could these homes present a security risk? It was an exercise of ethnic cleansing, and demolitions are a tool of the occupation, and they're a policy designed to inflict trauma on families and communities and make life so difficult that they will leave. And this is the reality of house demolitions, and this is how they should be viewed, and this is how they should be resisted. Thank you. Sorry, I think I went over.
Thank you so much, Bethany. Do you want to take the shared screen down?
Yeah.
I think you and Cody together just have moved us all so much. And you are right to see that, the power, the visual power of your film said everything several times more than words could, but even your words were just amazing. And I think we all owe you a great thanks for what you're doing. A bit in our name, not much in our name, but a bit. I mean, we all feel so moved and proud of what you're doing, and you and your colleagues. So our warmest best wishes and solidarity and friendship. We will hopefully have some questions. So I think now, if that's okay with you, Bethany, you can have a bit of a rest. But you're staying with us, aren't you? So if we could now go to Awdah, who's waiting, I think. Awdah, again, many thanks for joining us this evening. We are all very, very grateful for you taking the time out to talk to us when you've got so much to do. But I'll just say a little bit about you just before you start, so that people have an idea. You're an English teacher from al-Hummus in the south of Palestine. And we saw that on the map, I think, from Cody, which is good. You're also a founder member of the Good Shepard Collective. And I think the really important thing for people to realise that with all these things of being a teacher and part of this collective, you are a family of refugees, originally from Tel Arad, which is near Beersheba, which is on the map. And you were forced off the land, your family were forced off the land in 1948 and bought the land that you're now on in the 1960s. And when you spoke the other day to us, I just can't imagine it really, that your home has been destroyed twice by Israel, and your current home, in which you live with your mother, is sheltered. So you have an experience that most of us have no idea how to live with such an experience. So for you to talk to us about it would be wonderful. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Yeah, first thanks for inviting me for this, and special thanks for the people who organized this call. So really quick, my name is Awdah Hathaleen, and I'm from Al Khair village, South Hebron Hills. My name means return. So my parents gave me this name because they hope that one day they will return to their land. And from this point, we will start. Everything happened in 1948. And in 1948, it's the catastrophe, or as we say, the Palestinians, it's a Nakba. We were living in the south, in a place, it was Tel Arad, and now it became an Israeli city. We were living there, and when the catastrophe took place, you know, it's a war. So some Palestinian killed, some Palestinian got jailed, some of them, you know, transferred. So we are from the people who transferred from their land in 1948. So we moved here, or like by force, we came here, we got to this land, Al Khair, in South Hebron Hills. At first, we bought this land from people who are from the city, and in that time, it cost us a lot. So in that time, you know, the Bedouins, They all the time, you know, like in the past, I mean 1948, and that time they sell things or buy things by the animals. So we paid instead of this land around 100 camels in that time. And I all the time say we were really intelligent, or like our ancestors were intelligent because they got, you know, like something written that this is proof that the land is ours. We lived here our normal Bedouin life from 1948 up to 1982. And exactly in 1982, the second disaster happened, but for the people who are living in Khair. The Israeli authorities started making a military checkpoint. This military checkpoint expanded, you know, step by step. It became, you know, like an Israeli settlements. So nowadays, we are living beside one of the biggest settlements in South Hebron Hills. And how that affected the people? It affected the people by many ways. First, they confiscated around half of the land which the people, you know, used to live before 1982, and then they told the people, you are not allowed to get water, you are not allowed to get electricity. And also the hardest problem for me, and I think for most of the people who are living in Khair, it's the demolition, and also like the settlers attacking all the time. So really quick, I'm gonna talk about the demolition because it's really hard. So when we say demolition, it means a lot. It's not about destroying the house. It's not about destroying the house. It's about the feeling. It's about exactly how the people will feel. I remember the first demolition process which happened here in my village. It was in 2007. I remember in that day, early morning, I and two of my cousins were going to the school. So the school is close to the village. Like from the school, you can see the village. So we were going early morning. Yeah, but I remember, you know, it was something, you know, like many cars moving, Israeli civil administration. So we were talking. I remember one of my cousins told me, "Don't worry, they did everything they want. They didn't allow us to get the water and also about the electricity. So what else they will do?" No one of us in that time thought about the demolition. So I remember I was super happy that day because we supposed to have an sport class. So it means a lot for us students who are young. So we went to the school. We entered the class, and yeah, from the windows you can see the village. So suddenly what happened, you know, like uh, when we took a look to the village, it was something unbelievable. There's many bulldozers, many police cars with the soldiers, with the Israeli civil administration, everything was there. So I tried to back to the village really quick. So the teacher prevented me because he didn't want me to see everything. So at the end, you know, like I went back to the village. It's one of the worst memories which happened in all of my life. When I got back to the village, I remember everything. I remember my mom tears in that moment. I remember the faces of the women, my aunt and my sisters in that time. I remember the men, like I remember the anger in the men faces. I remember everything. In that moment, I thought everything's done. Everything's done, and now we just ended. We will leave. Where we will go, I don't know. Suddenly, you know, like I woke up when my oldest brother shouted to me, and he told me, "Awdah, come on, we are gonna rebuild again. We will rebuild our houses again." So I think that sentences changed a lot in my mind. Yeah, they destroy, we rebuild. So we started to rebuild, and from 2007 up to 2019 and 2020, you can say like every year the people of Khair faced at least one of the one demolition process, and when like if it's not a demolition process, it's many demolition order. So every year, you know, we see the Israeli civil administration all the time come, and you know, like what's like, what did they told us about the building? We have the papers, we have the documents which prove that this is our land. It's a Palestinian land. We went to the court, to the High Supreme Court. We complained. They told us, yeah, you're right. This is your land, but because you are living beside the settlements, so you are not allowed to build. You're not allowed to get water. You're not allowed to get electricity. So it doesn't make sense, because we are here around 30 years before them. But, you know, they all the time run to say, like, security reason. So one of the things which I'm going to mention also, the last few years, the demolition increased more than 100% in the south. And why? There is an organization, an Israeli organization, it's named Regavim. So really quick about them. It's an Israeli organization full of hate. They are racist. They hate the Palestinians. And what's their job? Easily, their job to push the Israeli civil administration to destroy the houses. So before Regavim, like your house can stay, for example, 6 months, sometimes 8 months without the demolition, or like without the Israeli civil administration discover that you built a house. But with this Regavim, everything got changed to the worst. So Regavim organization flying their drone 2 times per week, and they all the time film everything by their drone. And nowadays, and this year, for example, 2020, every year there is a demolition process in the south. Every year there is a demolition process in the south. And Regavim is moving more than the Israeli civil administration. And what's the simple Palestinian will do in the south? We know that through Oslo agreement they separated the area into A and B and C, and this is one of the things which Bethany shared. But what doesn't make sense that, yeah, they say in area C everything will be under Israeli control. And most of the problems for the Palestinians happen in area C. What a Palestinian in area A suffer from? Honestly, they have water, they have electricity, and they have building. Yeah, like they are not allowed to travel. And yeah, like if the Israeli authority wanna arrest someone, like they go, like it's easy for them. But here, unfortunately, our main rights became a dreams. We are not asking about, yeah, like traveling, good job, like car or whatever. No, we are asking about 3 main things. And I think in 2020 they became even rights for animals. Sorry for the words. We ask about water, we ask about electricity, and we ask about good house. And good house is just a simple house to protect our children from the hot in the summer and the cold in the winter. And yeah, like we the Palestinians now we got educated, and yeah, like we got into a point before we wait support and help from the others, we should start help ourselves by ourselves. And this is exactly what we did in Good Shepard Collective. So through Good Shepard Collective, unfortunately, really quick, most of the organizations, they work for their self-interest, and we have really long experience about this. So then we got to the point to create Good Shepard Collective, or to start Good Shepard Collective. You know, like we lived the hard situations, so we know exactly how someone will feel when they have a demolition process, for example, in Jordan Valley, or even in a Negev, or even like in east of Jerusalem, we know exactly how they feel. We know exactly how they feel. And we know what the things which will help them, So this is like why we started and in Good Shepard Collective, and we did really good job. And we are we will keep going in the future, but we need support. Honestly, yeah, like when someone tell me I'm in solidarity with you and I'm sorry, that's fine. It's better than nothing. But we need people to act for justice. We need people to act for justice. We need the people to do something, Like we all have to work for peace and justice. Peace doesn't mean that, yeah, like they will not destroy my house. No, but peace means that also our children should be okay. Not from the demolition, like the children here, like around 54% from our children see nightmares from the demolition. If I'm gonna talk now to the old people here in the village about hope, no one will listen to me because they got enough. They got tired. And honestly, we are ready to do whatever we can for the children, for the next generation. We believe in our fight, non-violent, resistance, and we will keep going. But we need the world to wake up and be with us. Support the Palestinians. The Palestinians deserve support. The Palestinian, they are really simple people, ask about simple rights. They are not asking about big things. Every single one in all the world can do something. We should not wait until we all have to be together, work for peace and justice and all these things, because it's really important. I only saw justice only written in the box. I didn't feel justice here. I didn't feel peace here. The people here, they are just waiting nothing. And honestly, also to be honest, and for the people who worked for Al Khair, for the internationals from wherever they are, they really did nice job. Now at least we feel that we are not alone. Even we have some people who worked, who supported. We feel that we are not alone. And it's really important. It's really important when you feel that you are not alone. I feel grateful for all the people who supported Al Khair. I feel grateful for all the people who supported Good Shepard Collective, because it's the organization just started from the middle of the conflict. And even like it's not a conflict. The conflict between two sides, they are equal. But here it's not a conflict. So sorry for the word, So I will not, talk so long. Again, thanks for inviting me for this call, and thanks for the people who helped. And inshallah, the future will be good for all of us together. Thanks.
Awdah, thank you ever so much. I just feel so, I don't know what to do with how I feel from everything that the three of you have talked about, and how we can in any way make sense of that. But I think that tonight really is about sort of how we can show solidarity and work with you. So thank you so much for that, and our solidarity and best wishes to your family and everything that you do. I just thought perhaps before I open it up to questions from other people, I just wonder whether Cody or Beth or indeed Awdah had any sort of final points you wanted to make from picking up from each other's talks. Cody, have you anything to say extra?
I think just like, I think Beth's story, of what sometimes people have to be willing to risk for justice, You know, you saw, you know, the physical abuse, you know, the obvious, you know, residual trauma of going through that, you know, of Odie's story of just, you know, he's not asking even to travel, that he just simply wants, you know, like basic shelter, to have his, you know, new son, Watan, not to be under the sun or out in the cold. You know, that people are risking a lot for really very, very small requests. And just to take that message home, I think was pretty clear from Bethany and Awdah.
Thank you very much. Beth, did you want to just come in and say anything more?
Just that I met Odie and Cody in the South Hebron Hills, and when I saw the situation of al-Khair right next to this settlement, any day they don't know when it can be destroyed, and the resilience of the community, it's so hard to describe. So I just everything that Odie and Cody has said, I hope that everyone just like takes it on board and takes these stories and turns them into action, because yeah, people aren't asking for much, they just want the right to live on their land. I mean, yeah, that's it.
Okay, fine. Well, look, thank you, the three of you, and I will give you a chance at the end to say anything, but perhaps I could now hand over to Katie for if there are any questions that we want to put to our speakers. Chris, you're muted, Chris.
I have a question, Katie.
Right.
Have we got any more questions?
There don't seem to be any more, so maybe you just go ahead, Chris, take it away.
That's great. That's good for me. Okay. This is a question for Awdah and for Cody. And I'm just trying to find it. Yeah. Just, can I get this straight, Cody? It seemed to me like you were saying that the BDS campaign is not very effective on the ground. And I wanted to check that with you, but also for Awdah, who says we have to get involved and we have to take some action. Well, that is one of the big areas that we as a group in Hexham are trying to raise the profile of. And I just wondered if you wanted to kind of go a bit further and tell us what you meant by that, because you know, how we see it over here is that the apartheid movement was very heavily impacted by the campaign against apartheid, the boycott of South African goods, for example, during the South African apartheid era. And we see that similarity with Palestine. I just wondered, you know, for example, with the house demolitions, Steve's been very active on the chat, promoting the issue about JBC and Caterpillar, for example, and, you know, Hewlett-Packard and people like this who we are engaged in boycotting. And I just wondered if you wanted to sort of say a bit more about that.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to. So it's not whether BDS is effective or whether it's not effective, right? Because, you know, it's about dissecting all of the little campaigns within inside of the movement, right? And so it's about bringing up and having these campaigns undergo an analysis, right? Of going, okay, so we get this ban not to play in Tel Aviv, what's the impact? Are there other things that we should be devoting our time to? What is going to be the impact of the campaign, and will it result in a structural change in the law? This is a good example. It was either last year or 2 years ago, there was a large campaign against Airbnb. And so there's a public affairs campaign asking for Airbnb not to have settlements or Airbnbs listed within inside of the settlements because they're illegal. And so the whole campaign was getting Airbnb to make a decision. Okay, so Airbnb goes, well, we're not going to list them, everything's fine. But then the very next day, after pressure, you know, the listings are back in the settlements. Okay. Now, if we would have structured a campaign that would have resulted in the law, right, then the CEO and the board couldn't have, you know, changed their decision because it would have been ingrained in the law, right? You know, and then you have a sustainable impact. And so we see the same thing. Okay, so let's boycott Volvo, let's boycott JCB. So what happens, you know, tomorrow? Tomorrow, then Hyundai is coming in with their excavators to bulldoze Palestinian homes, right? And so, like if our campaigns are structured in a way that none of the companies are allowed to do this sort of work, you know, then we're on to something. And so it's important that, yes, that we continue to have these conversations, and it does change the culture of the way companies do business, but we need to have certain business practices be illegal, point blank, right? And so what I'm not saying is that, oh, BDS, just throw it out the table. No, what I'm saying is that we need to have deeper discussions about these sort of campaigns, okay? So for example, the Good Shepard Collective is working on a campaign to cut the funding of Regabin. Okay, so how we go about discussing this campaign is we go, okay, you know, the Good Shepard Collective is a pretty small organization. So when we take a look at like having a campaign, you know, like what is our target? What are their assets? Okay, Regabin has about 8 employees and about a budget of $1 million. Okay, we're not talking about having a campaign against Caterpillar, who has a multi-billion-dollar portfolio with literally hundreds and thousands of workers across the globe, right? For lack of a better phrase, like we have to fight with inside of our own weight class, right? So we have these campaigns that, would it be wonderful to get Caterpillar to completely pull out and engage in all of these wonderful human rights standards? Yes, it would. But is that a campaign that we can win on our own? Probably not, right? And so it's also about having an honest appraisal of what's going to be impactful, what campaigns are winnable, and having those honest discussions with ourselves, right? And those can be somewhat difficult, because one of the reasons why the cultural boycotts have gained so much steam is because they are winnable. You know, it's easy to get a band not to come to Tel Aviv and play, right? So you won, you've had a successful campaign, but what's the impact on the ground? Audi is still sitting there tonight wondering if tomorrow he's going to have shelter for his 3-week-old son, right? And those are difficult discussions to have, because there's a lot of advocacy that, in our opinion, that goes on that's really not worth the paper it's printed out on.
Okay, Chris, did you want to say any more?
Well, we have got time. It's a huge area, as you said, Cody, and I thank you for your response. I don't necessarily agree with you, as you can probably tell. But I mean, it's a great thing to swap these ideas. And I mean, you know, we in the West do what we think worked before, and that you know the apartheid has great similarities. Anyway, I mean, I don't want to get into a long discussion. As you say, it's a huge area, and it ought to be looked at for the impact value it has. I absolutely agree with that. We did have the first talk we had was on BDS, and I just wish I could bring to mind some of the successes, but there have been political successes in BDS. But anyway, thanks for that. And thanks, Awdah.
Okay, Radha, what's your question? Is Radha there?
Yeah. I just had to unmute myself. I wanted to ask Cody, are you a Palestinian, Cody? If not, apart from Good Shepard's Collective, are you from what organization? Do you live in El Khair, or what is your, you know, what's your kind of involvement in all of this?
Yeah, like at the beginning, I'm actually originally from the United States. I'm not Palestinian. I'm not Jewish. I come from a Christian background. I come from a real small community. I just happened to come here about 15 years ago through an organization called the Christian Peacemaker Teams, who's had a protective presence in Hebron since about 1998, I believe. At any rate, I met the community Boumacher, I think like back in 2007. So I've known Awdah, even before he's, had hair on his chin, so I've just had a long relationship with the community, and that's one of the reasons why I've, stayed with it, because of the relationships.
Okay, thank you.
Rada, can I just ask what your question is about? Because it's a really important one.
Well, I don't know. I just wondered about Cody's background. He didn't sound Palestinian to me. Initially, I thought Cody was a Palestinian, like Awdah is. So, and I wondered whether his opinion about the BDS is something which is widely spread in a Palestinian community, because I volunteer in Palestine with a women's organization called International Women's Peace Service near Nablus. The area is called Salfit. I go there every other year, pick olives for 3 months, 2-3 months, with the ISM as well. And I know that amongst the people I meet there, they very much encourage BDS.
Yeah, so I'd like
so I'm sorry, like Chris said,
yeah.
I don't want this to become a big debate about the BDS. We obviously have different opinions, but I just wondered by the organization you come from, or whether that organization is against BDS. So I just wanted to figure that out. That's why I asked you about that.
So everyone listen very clearly. It's not that we oppose BDS, because we're engaged in that ourselves, but it's about having conversations about the individual campaigns inside the BDS movement. Some campaigns make sense, some campaigns don't make sense, right?
Okay.
And so it's about having that sort of conversation. So again, to make this very clear, it's not that the Good Shepard Collective is against BDS, we're very much for it, but it's about having conversations about which campaigns make sense and which ones don't.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I then pick up, Chris? Is that okay if I now pick up?
Of course, yes, go ahead.
Bethany, did you want to come in and say something? Sorry, before I do. I can see you put something on chat. Unmute.
No, sorry, I meant to send everyone a message, but I just sent it to you. So no, I'm good.
All right, did you want to say what it's about?
So I believe there was a question of how you can join international solidarity movement. So if you're based in the UK, you can contact the email address I put in the chat. But at the moment, because of the situation with COVID, there aren't any activists on the ground, and we actually don't know when we're going to be able to send people, because the situation is not good at the moment. I think Awdah and Cody could probably tell you more if people are interested about the COVID situation. So yeah, but you can email and ask about training dates.
That's really helpful. Thank you very much, Cody. Actually, that was well, 2 parts to my question, really. I'm really glad Rada was here, because I know about your organisation you support. 2 things I wanted to ask. I have Palestinian friends. In fact, one of them has died in a refugee camp from COVID because they couldn't get to the treatment. So I am interested what you can tell us about it on the ground. And then the second thing that I really was interested in is about women and what they're doing within the movement, solidarity movement. So any of you like to answer either of those?
My internet is a little bit weak, so could I hear the question again?
Yeah, it was 2 parts to it, Awdah. One was about how what's happening with COVID on the ground in Palestine with all the restrictions, And then the second part of my question was about women and their involvement in the struggle. Could you hear that?
Hello.
Can you not hear?
Hello.
Could you not hear?
I didn't hear that. Did you hear me? I don't hear you.
What I'll do is I'll come back to you, Awdah, but perhaps we will go then to Radha to just talk about the women, and then I'll come back to you, Awdah, to speak about COVID. That's what it was. Cody, do you have an easy link to Awdah to tell him? So Radha, do you want to say something about your organization?
Sure, yeah. So my organization is called, like I said, International Women's Peace Service. We were set up in 2002 after the second Intifada, or during the second Intifada. And we stay in an area called Salfit, which is a region between kind of south of Nablus. We used to be in Palestine all year round, but nowadays it's a bit more difficult to go to Palestine, and many of our women have been refused entry, etc. So we usually are there during olive harvest. Yeah. So we are women's organization, but we work with anybody. We don't only work with women. We are like ISM. We support Palestinian resistance. We do it peacefully. We provide protective presence. We also stay in the houses when they're being demolished, and do all kinds of things. We do lots of publicity and kind of shouting from the rooftops about what's going on in Palestine, because as you know, none of this we heard tonight, or very little of it are you going to hear on the media in the UK. So, you know, so this is what we do. But I do want to say that because we are women, we have more access to other Palestinian women, and women we are in touch with are incredible. They're a kind of the strongest part of Palestinian resistance, in my opinion. They're incredible, leaders in everything. They kind of look after everybody, but they're in the front line of everything. All of us in the IWPS learn so much from Palestinian women, and how they do things, and how they resist, and how they survive. Because in Palestine, surviving is an act of resistance. Picking olives is an act of resistance, and stuff like that. So yeah, there is lots of women's organizations. But like I say, even though we have access to them, we don't only work with women. Yeah.
Okay, that's really fantastic. And I don't know, can you use the chat to put the title on?
I did.
Oh, did you? It's just I haven't seen it. Okay.
Oh, maybe I send it to Steve only, because I know Steve.
That's fine.
I'll make sure. Can I just say one more thing? I don't want to monopolize. I am a member of Walton Forest Palestine Solidarity Campaign, and I have made a little video about my experience of picking olives last year. So I will include that in the chat if people are interested to see. It's 12 minutes long, and it talks a lot about IWPS as well. So I'll do that now.
Yes, absolutely, and thank you so much. I just
it's a pleasure.
Chris, you've got a couple more questions before we close.
Yeah, I've got a question from Paul Del Rey. He would like to hear Cody speak a little bit more on the problem with some non-profits not challenging the status quo. And I'll just tell you as well that we have another question waiting from Mick Bowman, and we have a question from Steve Waters as well, Anne. Okay.
Okay, fine. So we have to be quite brief because we're going to lose connection otherwise. So Cody, could you just say a little bit more for us about those NGOs that are keeping the status quo in your view?
Yeah, I was looking through in the chats, and there's something in the thing about Peace Now, for example. Someone, I think, had a little credit. Oh yeah, Peace Now are good at that kind of stuff, and yet they're Zionists and do not question the establishment of Israel or support the right of return. Sad face. Thanks, Odie. Very informative and inspirational talk. So, you know, Peace Now would be a good example of an organization that I think in a lot of people's eyes, you know, they lift up Peace Now as kind of being like one of the solid Israeli organizations. And yes, it is the case that they do a lot of good job, you know, documenting settlement expansions, you know, having analysis even on how settlements are developing, and even, you know, even going to court, you know, for Palestinian families. But as this person, you know, pointed out, that, you know, Peace Now is a part of the settler colonial project, right? You know, they legitimize the state in various ways. They don't support the rights of refugees, right? And so it is about having, you know, a deeper understanding about, you know, the implications of how some work is done as opposed to others. So in very real ways, you know, by them marginalizing the voices of Palestinian refugees, depending on how this situation plays out with the resettlement of Palestinians, you know, of refugees such as Awdah, about material compensation, resettlement, et cetera, that could set a legal precedent that not only affects Palestinian refugees, but Iraqi refugees, Syrian refugees, et cetera, right? So that's, you know, that's one example. But another example would be, you know, some of these other like Christian organizations that, you know, that their act of justice is again, you know, providing Palestinians with an educational scholarship, for example, right? And so, you know, so what, you give a Palestinian, you know, another scholarship or another playground, that doesn't affect the way that violence is inflicted upon them, right? And so you see a lot of fundraising going, oh, you know, like, let's give Palestinians this or let's give Palestinians that. And there's no direct connection to going, this is what you have to ask your legislatures to do. This is what you have to ask your attorney generals to do, et cetera, because for them, you know, being apolitical allows them to, you know, to not live in the tension of doing this work and having, you know, the difficult conversations, right? Because the difficult conversations is ultimately, you know, the spot where real movements of justice are birthed. Right?
Actually, that's really clear. Thank you very much. And I hope whoever put that question on the chat got the answer that they wanted. So excellent. So Nick, you've got a question?
Yeah, thanks, Sonia. We just firstly just like to thank Bethany, Cody, and Awdah for their really powerful presentations. And just to back up what Bethany was saying about ISM as a really valuable contributor to the movement for justice for Palestine. I had the privilege of being with ISM myself in the West Bank for a month back in 2015. My question is about the fact that Israel likes to dress up the demolitions as a process based in law, to try and give it some spurious legitimacy. They say, we've used the court, we've used the administrative process, we're just carrying out the orders of the courts. But obviously the courts and the planning process are at their core instruments of the oppression, they're instruments of ethnic cleansing. Israel likes to portray itself as a democracy and it's a bastion of law and order. This really sort of shows that it's not. This whole sort of process around the spurious legitimacy given to the demolition process. So I just wonder how best to use that is a prong of attack, if you like. I mean, it relates to what Cody was saying about we have to question some of the basic laws which are in place, but it's also about the basic laws in place in Israel as well, and just questioning this attempt by Israel to portray itself as a society, a country based on law, when the laws themselves are instruments of blatant instruments of oppression, as shown by their use in demolitions. I don't know. I know it's a big issue, but just, if anyone has any quick comment to make on that.
Okay, that's really good. Awdah, can you hear us now?
So I think, you know, like all the people agree that what's Israeli people or Israeli authorities doing is illegal. But the issue that they all the time try to let the world see that everything they do is legal. But I think when we have internationals here, or when we have some people like who are witnesses and document everything all the time, the like I mean, like through the demolition, for example, all the time they will be like so angry or so like upset if there is people who are filming, especially internationals or like Jewish people or Jewish groups, because they want to show the world what they want to show. And honestly, Israeli authorities is maybe like stronger than the Palestinians, like in using the media. So the issue that we, the Palestinians, started, you know, to all the time try to film everything, to document everything, to show the world that what they are doing is totally illegal. And they all the time mention that they are a democracy state. But how come a democracy state destroying small shelters for the children? Yeah. Destroying even schools. Like they do everything here, and they all the time try to show the world like they are democracy state. They are with the humans, with the humanity, and yeah, like they're ready for peace, but they are totally wrong, and it's not everything in the media is right. Anyone who wanna understand exactly what's going on, don't let anyone to let you know exactly what's happening. Just try to ask, and you know, like if you are lucky to have a visit to the south, you will understand everything, and you will judge yourself. You will judge everything by yourself, by your eyes. And inshallah, like we will all the time try to film everything, document everything, to show the world that what's happening is totally illegal.
I think that's really, really helpful. And unless Cody or Beth want to come in on that at all, I think we've said quite a lot about it. So I was going to let Steve come in with his question.
Really just be useful to have actual video footage as much as possible, just to show people, not of demolitions, because it's quite powerful, you know, to be showing people. Like a picture's worth 1,000 words, but a video's worth a hell of a lot more as well. Just if it could be great if it had a regular source.
Yeah.
I imagine we get videoed quite a lot.
Yeah. So what you're suggesting is that we make a way for the video to be shown wider than tonight. Yeah. I think that's right. I think that's absolutely right. I mean, I sat here probably like you thinking, I've got to get that shown there and I've got to get it shown there. That's a really good point. So has anybody else got any questions before I just let Cody, Beth and Awdah finally have a couple of words? No? Okay, then Cody and Beth and Awdah, would you just like to say a couple of words in summary before we go? Beth?
Yeah, just thank you again. And, you know, also, you know, the work that Cody and Awdah are doing in the West Bank against Regavim is also something that we can do here in the UK, because they have close ties with groups here like UK Lawyers for Israel, and they actually spoke in London last year. We did a protest against it. So we need to watch whenever this is happening, because we can't allow these ties to be made and for these organizations to be legitimized, because they're, you know, terrorists, basically.
Okay, thank you very much. And Cody, just a couple of final words.
I think just echoing the things that's already been said, but I think just as a practical you know, step is, you know, Steve had put several links, you know, resources into the chat. So folks that don't have, you know, access to these resources, or even if you're already engaged, there's several things that Steve had posted that's really helpful. In terms of the home demolitions, there's so many things on YouTube. If you just Google al-Khair home demolition, there'll be dozens of videos that show up of demolitions. And so I just think in closing again, just with gratitude for, you know, opening up the space, inviting us, you know, all the folks here continuing to, you know, figure out what justice looks like and how they can be personally invested in the realization of that, you know, in the future. So again, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Awdah, the final word with you. I hope you can hear.
Thanks a lot for inviting me, and inshallah we wish in the future that we all work for justice by really real way, and inshallah we all will live in peace one day.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Well, obviously, on behalf of all of us and all the people who will watch this from other places, we really, really appreciate you taking your time and even dealing with the sort of Wi-Fi. I mean, it's just a nightmare, let alone anything else. So thank you all so much. And we will keep in touch with you, and we would hope you will keep in touch with us. And just finally, a message of solidarity and friendship to everybody who's going through terrible times in Palestine. Thank you so much indeed. I'm really, really grateful.
Can I just say, just to remind you that don't forget to see the video of this evening on the website, which is in the chat file. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, everybody. We've got a bit over time, and I'm sorry, but that's bad sharing. But really been a fantastic evening. I'm very grateful to everybody and look forward to the next one. Thank you so much. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Bye.